Hey, everybody, and welcome to the annual Amateur Theory podcast. I know you've been waiting on bated breath for this to come out. You were wondering on January 1st, where is it? Where's the annual pod? Well, there's been a lot going on, so it's had to been delayed until now. I personally actually just got back from a trip to Europe, but I am back now and excited to talk about this last year, 2022. So, starting out, let's just kind of go over what I think are like some of the bigger movies that came out and see if you guys saw them. So I think one of the biggest movies that I could think of from the beginning of the year was The Batman. That was a big deal.
This all feels so long ago.
It was. That was like so early.
Was that March?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I could be wrong. I don't remember because I don't know. It was kind of a long year, and also a lot came out film-wise. Yeah. I feel like there were a lot of movies last year, a lot of quality ones too.
She's just going to bring up a.
It's just I remember the Batman coming out, and it feels like old news now when it's not that old, but It feels like it was years ago almost.
So some other big movies: Top Gun: Maverick, that came out
this year,
or 2022.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it came out this summer.
Wow.
I know, it feels like forever ago.
This one's more recent. We had Avatar: The Way of Water. I think it's still in theaters as of recording. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Another really big movie.
That came out this summer.
Yeah, we have Jurassic World Dominion, Minions: The Rise of Gru, Thor: Love and Thunder. These are all just the top grossing movies of the year.
Yeah, the big studio efforts.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Black Adam. And then there's some big indie movies that came out that probably wouldn't have...
like all the A24 films.
Right. There was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot.
It was... I don't know if that counts as a notable or big movie. I actually saw that because it was on Netflix. And it is the exact level of quality you would expect from a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie coming out in 2022. You know what you're getting, essentially.
Yeah. Maybe more notable was Pearl. That was A24. And then X.
Well, yeah, because X came out first, and I remember that generating some buzz. And then Pearl came out not too long after, which I actually never saw Pearl. I saw X with a friend, and we were actually both a little lukewarm on it because it seemed to be getting a lot of hype, and we were just like, it's fine. But then my friend, she saw Pearl later when it came out, and she really loved it, and has been telling me constantly ever since to see it, which I will one of these days.
I would say I had a friend recommend me both, and I personally liked X better than Pearl, but I thought they were both great. So I don't know if you like Pearl if you didn't like X. That would be interesting to let me know. If you thought the X was just okay, and then you watched Pearl and tell me if you think that one's great. I'd be very interested to see why you think one is better than the other. But just to cap off some other big ones, Morbius ended up becoming a bit of
that was a thing.
That came out this year. The Bad Guys was a Universal. The Shrek movie came out this year.
Puss in Boots 2.
Puss in Boots: Last Wish, yeah.
Which I actually saw. Did any of you guys see that?
I
haven't seen it. I've heard it's very good. That's all I've heard about it, though.
It is good. I really enjoyed it, and I never even saw the first Puss in Boots movie, but But this was quite enjoyable, and they do that
It is Spider-Man.
animation thing now where everyone's trying to be a Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, which
I'm
is
pretty sure
which
it's
is
the animators. Like, I think they just hired the animators from that movie for this movie.
yeah, that would make sense. Which I'm fine with. I like that animation style.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
2 movies you haven't mentioned that I think are worth bringing up.
Okay.
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Yes, that was what I was gonna say next.
Oh, you're gonna say that next, and then Nope by Jordan Peele came out as well.
Nope, that was big. And then I'm gonna
And-
throw in Bodies, just because that was a movie I really liked. I saw in theaters.
Then let me throw in Barbarian, which I also liked.
I also really liked Barbarian.
Then let me throw in The Northman.
Oh yeah, that was another
Yeah.
good movie. There's so many.
Yeah, there were a ton, and I know we're still forgetting some, but
Scream, which is like Scream.
that's right. There was a Scream movie. Goodness,
Yeah.
so much came out last year. I've forgotten all of it.
And then I haven't seen it, but Babylon. I guess people are talking about that. People are talking about the new what's it called? The new
You'll get it, man. You can do it. I
Steven
believe in you.
Spielberg movie. The new Steven.
Oh, the
Spielberg.
Fable.
Oh,
The Fable
yeah.
Moons, that's what it is. And I'm sure there's other big ones. The Menu, Pinocchio. There's a new Pinocchio reboot on
Guillermo del
Netflix.
Toro.
Weird Al the Yankovic story.
Oh,
Um,
Yeah.
and
there's,
there was
the
another Halloween-
Banshees of Inisherin. I think that
Yeah,
got some awards at the Golden Globes. Yeah.
I've definitely heard of that. There was Hocus Pocus 2. The Woman King. And I'm sure a bunch of others.
Yeah. Too many to list, let alone
I know.
talk about all of them. So.
A bunch of movies. But just in terms of movies that really stood out to me, I think Bodies was actually ended up being one of my favorites of this year. Not my absolute favorites, but one of my favorites. And just because that's a lesser known movie, I feel like people might not have seen that one or heard about it as much. I just want to give it a quick plug because it was a horror comedy and it did the horror really well and it was hilarious. Like tears, laughing, hilarious. So it was just a great movie. I want to shout it out.
Yeah, no, I really like that one too. It's a movie where the ending makes everything before it that much better.
Yeah, yes. Maybe one of my favorite endings of a movie ever.
Yeah. Yes, definitely lots of fun.
And then I will say that for Puss in Boots, I ended up watching the 1 and 2 this year. So I would be all in the know for the plot, which I'm happy I did because both were good. And they set it up for a sequel in Shrek 6. So I'm going to watch that too.
Let's see. There's a lot of movies that I've wanted to see this year that I still haven't, and that's because my philosophy towards watching movies has turned into the following. Do my friends want to see it? Or is it easily accessible on the streaming devices that I currently have? And so the result of that is that I have not seen some movies that really interest me. Like I haven't seen The Northman, and I haven't seen Everywhere All at Once. Those are my 2 movies that I would like to see that I haven't, more than any. So that
I will
said,
say between those 2, in my opinion, Everything All at Once is the better movie. I think that's the must-see one. I think
Okay.
The Northman is cool. Like if it is on a streaming thing, then like by all means, check it out.
I watched The Northman on Amazon Prime, so
it's
Yeah,
on
I think I did
Amazon
too.
Prime.
Actually, I don't
Yeah.
think I paid for that. But Everything All at Once, I saw in theaters. That was very cool.
it is funny because those 2 movies actually might be tied for my favorite of the year.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Well, Everything Everywhere All at Once is just, it's kind of like a very manic, fun sort of movie. It's just lots of crazy fun stuff happening.
It felt good to see a martial arts kind of action movie make it into theaters and be a success. So I feel like it's been a while since we've had one.
Yeah. And The Northman is Robert Eggers' third movie now. I think
I've
this is
seen
after
The Witch and
Lighthouse.
The Lighthouse, yeah, but I haven't
Yeah.
seen this one yet.
Yeah, and this is like, it's one of those miserable, violent movies where it's just dark and dour and grim the whole time. But I think Robert Eggers is very, like, for lack of a better word, artistic about these kind of things. Like, he knows how to frame a shot, he knows how to compose a scene, he knows how to put this all together so that it's not just like dour brutalism, for 2 hours. If you like his other movies, you'll probably like this one. And I also just like how he takes care when it comes to historical accuracy. I just like that these movies feel very different. They very much feel like they're set in the time periods that they're set in. You can just tell that there's a lot of care taken towards reproducing just dialects or scenes or customs. So I would definitely recommend checking it out. And yeah, it's on Amazon Prime, I believe. So
All right.
easy to get a hold of.
Yeah, I think I can. I think I have access to that. I'll have to check. Okay. So, given that I haven't seen those two yet, and maybe they would be my top if I had seen them. I really liked Batman, but it isn't my favorite. But I thought I might talk about it because even though I don't think it's the most fun I've had watching Batman, I feel like that some of Nolan's films are more how do I put it? Are better at just delivering kind of like entertaining, I don't know, follow through with that character. I felt like, because when I was like a very, very young child, like Batman was like my entire life. I absolutely loved Batman, and the new Batman movie, that take on the Batman is my favorite conceptually. Like, I felt like that was the version of the Batman that most aligns with the way that I kind of perceive that character. So, yeah, I don't know. I liked it a lot.
A little bit, just because the Batman was my movie of 2022, which surprised me because I'm not a big superhero guy in general. But what I liked about it so much, and I like this version better than the Nolan movies. I think this is the best. I think it's just probably hands down the best superhero movie I've ever seen. And part of it is that.
Wait, period?
I think so.
The best superhero movie you've ever seen? Okay.
Yeah, I can't think of one that okay, so the other one that maybe I'd have to think about Enter the Spider-Verse, because that's also a great movie. But it'd probably come down to those two as far as which ones I think is the best. They're very different. But what I liked about the Batman so much is that it didn't feel like a superhero movie. I mean, as like, it just didn't feel like someone doing superpowers, getting in super fights, right? It was like a whodunit caper where you're kind of like walking through it, and a very
It was Batman being a detective,
yeah
living up to his namesake.
But then what I really liked, I had a really good experience at the movie theater with it, which I think is part of it, is that just I went with all my friends, we all saw it, and we saw this humongous screen, and so it was just the experience itself was very, very memorable, especially the car chase scene where he's chasing the Penguin. That's like seared in my brain in a very good way. But what I really liked about it was just the moodiness of it all, and like how everything was just like seared into dark colors, and like it felt very like ephemeral in just a way I really appreciated it. It made it very engaging, and it made the movie, which is really long, feel short, which I cannot say is true for the Nolan movies. I feel like for me, those movies feel their length.
Okay.
Whereas for this one, it didn't. It really sped by. I actually watched it multiple times, which for me is rare. I usually don't rewatch movies, but I saw this one, I think like 3 times maybe this year.
Well, here's why I think you're completely wrong about everything you just said. No, I'm kidding. I like the movie too. Although for me, I could feel the 3-hour length. But to be fair, I saw it in theaters and I had to go use the bathroom about an hour of the way in. And I don't like missing any parts of movies, so I just suffered for the rest of the movie. To be fair, it wasn't that bad, and the narrative was good enough that I was mostly distracted from my bodily needs. I was engaged with the movie for most of it. And while I did like it, to me it didn't need to quite be 3 hours. I think I still prefer the Nolan movies. But this is definitely like a solid entry into the I don't know, just the large franchise of Batman. And I do really like the detective fiction elements of this story. I'm glad to see a Batman movie where he actually tries to figure out a murder mystery in a way. Like a lot of people said, it's kind of like Seven with Batman, which is kind of an apt description.
Yeah, and a lot of his comics are like that, like Long Halloween, a lot of the famous ones.
Yeah, it's called Detective Comics,
Yeah. Fair enough. And so and I agree that I think this Batman stylistically was more interesting than Nolan's films, but yeah, I think that I don't know, there was something so I don't know, the tension of the bullet Nolan's Joker film, I don't feel like this movie ever felt quite as urgent, if that makes sense. Though there were some scenes, certainly like the Joker chase, yeah, for sure. But I'm going to give my favorite movie to Barbarian, actually.
Yeah, that was the interesting one.
Yeah, Barbarian, I think. So I feel. I mean, I wonder how much of our audience really doesn't want to hear about villain, about details about this movie, I guess. The more I talk about Barbarian, the more spoiled it gets. It's like one of those movies where
it's a good movie to know nothing about going into.
Yeah. But it's sort of like Bodies. It's funny. It's scary. And it is weird. Yeah. So.
Yeah,
I loved it. I feel like I vividly remember every single thing that happened in that movie. Like there are some parts of other movies where it kind of blurs together and stuff like that, but Barbarian is the movie where I could tell you exactly what happened at every single point of that film, because all of it was just so immediate.
I don't think I'm ruining anything when I say this, but one of the most kind of crazy scenes, I was surprised one was improv. After the podcast, I'll tell you which scene it is. But
okay. I'd love to hear.
That was the improv scene. That was wow.
Yeah.
That was absolutely it was crazy.
Yeah, anyone who's into horror movies, I'd say this is a must see. Very, very good stuff. And like Adam said, it's extremely memorable. I think I remember everything from that movie too. It's a ride. It's a fun one.
Yeah.
And also, Justin Long's in it, and I don't feel like I've seen him in anything for forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to see him come back. the Apple guy, I guess, kind of.
And for that rule too. All the rules were really, really. It's like, I don't know. I feel like I could talk about that movie, but I can't. So like, if I was given the opportunity, like this was a space where, like all no spoilers were assumed, then I could talk about that movie for a long time. Like so many different elements of it, and I can't talk about a single element, or else I feel like it becomes more. The mystique goes away. So yeah, it's great. You should see it.
I feel like, on this podcast, we have to talk about 2 movies. One, Top Gun. It was the highest grossing movie of the year. Did you guys see it?
Is it? I saw Top Gun. Did it gross more than Avatar? I guess Avatar's still in theaters.
So Avatar's still happening. That's the other movie we should talk about is Avatar. But Avatar's still happening. But as of right now, I don't think it has beaten Top Gun Maverick. Okay. So, first of all, Top Gun Maverick, do you guys think that the sequel is better than the original?
Yeah. So,
yeah,
I
agree.
So I never grew up like with the first Top Gun movie. I saw that like a few days before I went to the theater to see Top Gun Maverick. And while I enjoyed the first movie a lot, it's a glorious piece of 80s cinema, I think. It's one of those relics of its time. Like it's very fun. But the second movie is, I think, just generally a more engaging film. As a sequel, I think it does things that like a sequel like should do. Like when it comes to like building on your source material, and I mean like the action scenes, the special effects, like are great, phenomenal. I really enjoyed the second Top Gun movie.
It has been a long time since I've seen the first one, but it was funny when I watched this movie, and I didn't see it in theaters, so that could have affected my, how I perceived it. But I saw it on streaming, and maybe like 30 minutes in to the movie, I was thinking to myself like, oh, I'm not gonna like this. Like, this is so boring. I do not need, this is gonna be like callbacks constantly to old 80s things and like referencing the old movie. And I was like, oh, let's strap in, like, all right, I have to finish this. And by the end of the movie, it had totally changed my mind. Like, I was totally gripped. But I do feel like this movie was long. Or this movie kind of felt long. Like, it could have cut maybe 30 minutes out and been okay. But I think that maybe the stuff that like I didn't appeal to me, which was a lot of the callback stuff, because I think there was a lot of that, especially in the beginning. Like, remember this bar, remember this person, remember, just so much kind of nostalgia baiting. That probably does appeal to certain people who are like huge fans of the old movie. For me, I like.
I don't know. I didn't think the nostalgia baiting was actually that bad. But then again, I don't remember a ton about the first half of the movie. I will say I saw it in theaters, and I think that helped with the whole spectacle of the thing. Like, this was a very good movie to have watched like on the big screen.
Yeah, so I like both movies. I think that the old movie has one thing over the new movie, but the new movie's better in every other respect. And that is that I think that the old one
has taken my breath away.
Things. It's actually two things. What?
Has Take My Breath Away, the song.
Oh.
They both have danger zone, so don't worry.
So the old movie does two things better, I think. The first is that the story is a lot more compact. And so, like, the old movie is like does a lot with a very small economy. Like, it's like there's a very basic plot, and yet every single point of that plot diagram is like fun, and it's that way the whole time. It's short, and it sticks the landing. Like the part that you would want the movie to end, like on that high note, it ends right there on that old movie, which is this. So the new movie, I think, suffered very slightly from being. How long is that movie? It felt longer. Yeah, it certainly felt longer. And then also, I felt like it spent a long time on the falling action after the climax, which kind of I felt like dampened the impact of the whole thing. But like, yeah, like as you were saying about like what a sequel does well, like I absolutely agree that it takes from the old movie in a way that is actually interesting and engaging and has stakes, instead of like, you know, the tendency among sequels to do something worse or bad because the good story was already told in the first film. And it didn't feel like that way at all. Like it felt like that this was a good story and a good outgrowth of the things that happened in that movie. And also the movie did a great job at making Maverick like feel like the legendary status it was trying to sell. Like it did a really good job by just showing through like showing scenes like that really established why he would be that way. I don't know. Like it's hard not to get swept up in what the movie was doing, despite jingoism. You know, I still like, despite it, like I still allowed myself to kind of like to get carried away by like what was cool about the movie, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, just like all those jets just flying in the sky and doing their thing, that stuff is all awesome.
Yeah.
Well, the other maybe super big movie of the year, Avatar 2, has everyone seen that?
Yeah.
So that movie I saw, and I actually saw it with Adam, but that we saw it in theaters in 3D, and I think that definitely impacted how much I enjoyed the movie. I think that I would not have liked the movie as much if I had not seen it in 3D, because it does do the 3D spectacle super well. Probably better than any other movie I've seen. Actually, I can't think of another movie that did the 3D effects better than this one did.
I would say this is one of my favorite, or Avatar 2 is one of my favorite theater experiences.
Yeah.
Wasn't like one of my favorite movies of 2022, although it is a decent movie, I think. But just because I saw it also in 3D IMAX, and just it was really about the spectacle. Like,
yeah,
just 3D effects, all the stuff underwater. Like, it was kind of fun to just watch it. And then like, I'm in a crowd, and like, there's this like group of like older Korean people next to me, and just them going like, whoa, wow. Like you could kind of like feel the audience like you know, like their awe, you know. It was kind of cool to share in that.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because the first Avatar, I remember hearing the same thing, that you had to see it in theaters, you had to see it in 3D, 4D. They were doing like weird 4D stuff, and yet like I didn't see it. I saw it like on streaming or like not even, I guess, DVD at the time, and I remember thinking like, this is bad. Like I did not. I mean, it's not like the worst movie in the world, but you know, the actual plot of itself is just Pocahontas with blue people. I'm not the first person to have said that, but it is what Dancing with Wolves, whatever. It's just that movie, and so that was like, I didn't have high expectations for this one, but it makes you wonder if I had seen that in 3D at the time, would I have been as into it as everyone else, maybe. But I do think that the plot on this one is better than the first movie. This one was a bit more original. you know, it's not quite such a derivative idea, at least to me. And they kind of hit you over the head with like kind of moralizing from the movie. A lot of environmentalism and colonialism and stuff. But like those, I thought that they did those messages pretty well in a compelling way. So I was didn't dislike that either.
Yeah, I am. So I don't know, because there are, I think, a bunch of ways to see this movie. You know, you can watch in standard 2D, then 3D, then IMAX 3D. So I don't know what all the formats are, but the version I saw this in, a good chunk of the movie was in 48 frames per second. And I don't know how to explain that well to people if you don't know, but it's kind of like, you know how on some TVs they have that effect where everything looks like very like smooth, kind of like more real life than real life. Anyway, that's essentially what 48 FPS does. And so when I first noticed that at the beginning of the film, I thought, ooh, I'm not sure if I'm gonna like this, because generally I just like sticking to 24 FPS. It's just feels more movie-ish to me. But it actually won me over, and I think it helped with the 3D special effects, especially underwater. Like, it just made everything seem very real, in a sense. I know some people have been complaining about the 48 frames per second, but I actually really enjoyed it. I guess I'd say the biggest issue in that department actually is that the entire movie wasn't in 48 frames per second, so sometimes like it would switch back and forth, and when it switched back, like the 24 frames per second like felt very choppy and weird. But did you guys notice any of that in your screening? I don't know if maybe they did have it.
Yeah, I definitely noticed the frame per second thing, though. I don't know, maybe I actually never noticed that it switched back, but I could tell, like, yeah, that motion, like they did this a lot in The Hobbit too, in the Hobbit movies.
Yeah, it was really controversial at the time.
Yeah, and I remember thinking it was super jarring in those movies. I didn't feel like it was as jarring in this one, because I don't know, because I guess.
Well, I think they made the technology a bit better.
Yeah, to the point, I didn't even notice that it lowered the frame rates in certain scenes. I didn't even realize that happened. So,
yeah, and I think that with The Hobbit, I think part of the issue with doing it like that is that when movies become too realistic looking, they start to look like sets instead of landscapes, right? Like, because it's just too. Whereas this is such an alien world, so CGI'd up, like it couldn't possibly look like that. Like, no matter how you did it, it would always, look, because it's a big CGI blue screen with like, underwater. I don't actually, do they shoot anything underwater, or is it all CGI?
I watched.
Probably did, I think.
Right.
Like, I watched some YouTube videos about the filming. And in all of the scenes that they did, including many underwater scenes, they were in this room. Everything was green. They had like special like dots all over the actors' faces and stuff like that. Actually, through that video, I found out that of the family, the main family at the center, the young girl. Do you guys know who plays that the not the youngest girl, but like the daughter in the family?
Oh yeah, Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah, Sigourney Weaver plays her. I had no idea that was the case until I saw that.
She's playing the daughter of her original character from the first movie.
Yeah. I was totally able to tell that. I could tell by her like face.
Really?
But that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I didn't see them film any kind of live action parts at all, other than in Green Room.
Yeah. But that being said, like, the CGI in this movie is so good. Like, we've already basically perfected CGI at this point, but I feel like this somehow just pushed it even like a step further. Like I don't. Yeah, it feels very like cutting edge of technology, which makes sense because James Cameron's always been on the forefront when it comes to that kind of thing.
Did you guys all see Black Panther?
I have not seen it.
I have not seen that.
Okay.
Nor have
I'll
I
say-
seen any Marvel movie this year, actually.
Okay, yeah, Black Panther is the only Marvel movie I saw, but it was the top grossing Marvel movie of the year. It's the third top grossing, so I just looked at it. It's Maverick, Avatar, then Black Panther. I will say I saw Black Panther in 3D as well. And I remember thinking at the time, which was before I saw Avatar 2, that I did a pretty good job. I think that Avatar 2 3D is just so, what they do with depth. Like that's the craziest bit. Like usually there's like parts that are out and parts that are in, and that's the 3D. But this is like, well, no, this is here, and this is here, like at different. So it was pretty crazy. But I mean, 3D effects, whatever aside, you don't need to see Black Panther in 3D. I'll just say that was, I thought, a very well done movie. I think they handled the death of their lead actor in a very good way. And there is that was another movie that didn't feel they definitely kind of leaned into the superhero stuff towards the end because it's Marvel and they have to. It's like a lot. But for a lot of that movie, it did not feel like your stereotypical Marvel movie, and in a way that I appreciated. It almost felt like it has like a geopolitics element to it because Wakanda, the country, has to deal with other countries, which I thought they did that in a very compelling way. So I give that a shout out too. Any other movies, things you want to mention before we can talk about non-movie media for a bit?
I'll give a quick shout out to the Banshees of Inisherin, because I think out of all the movies I saw last year, I guess 2022, that's the one that stuck the most in my mind. Although I did watch it really recently, it's one that I keep going back to and thinking about a lot. It's a very good movie. Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson give great performances like usual. It's a bit of a downer, so be prepared for that. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it kind of makes me think. Like, it's one I just keep going back to and thinking about certain scenes. So, and any movie that does that is, I feel like, worth mentioning.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of the way I felt about The Green Knight, which wasn't last year, but the year before. It's kind of a similar thing where that movie was like, I'm hesitant to say pretentious because when you're like making art, okay, and then it's difficult, then the common thing to jump on is like, oh, it's pretentious. Like, and I'm not trying.
It's
to
a very subjective.
It is difficult. It's a difficult movie. I'll say that, and not the typical thing that I would associate with like my favorite. But it was a movie that I kept thinking about after I had seen it. So, yeah, good.
All right, another year of movies in the books. 2022. There's a bunch we didn't talk about. Even ones that I saw that we didn't talk about. Like I saw the new Scream, which was good, but just not as good as the other ones. So,
oh no, we gotta talk about Sonic the Hedgehog 2, guys.
Which
Which I actually did see. I actually enjoyed that one a little.
It looked okay. Jim Carrey.
It's better than the first one.
Oh.
This isn't high praise, but it's one of the best video game to film adaptations I think I've seen. Which really isn't saying much.
It cleared
not a high bar.
A bar somewhere. That's good.
Oh, but all right, for last year's non-movie media, music, video games, TV shows, or just a big smorgasbord, whatever you want to talk about. Any highlights for you? Anything that you want to just talk about? I'll mention the new Weeknd album. That was my favorite album that came out in 2022 that I liked. I actually listened to probably more not new music last year than I did new music. Not super old stuff, but just things that came out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. For some reason, just kind of dominated my listening. But as far as new music, that was the highlight for me, was the Weeknd's new album.
Yeah. Generally, or it's been a thing for the past few years where like I'm just pretty bad about keeping up with new releases. But this year I made a bit more of an effort, especially the last few weeks of December, month or so. I made kind of like a mad dash to listen to as many 2022 albums as I could. I was looking at, a bunch of like best of the year lists and like just taking picks. And of course I still did listen to most stuff. There's a lot of music gets released every year. I'd say my 2 favorite albums of the year. Probably one would be Dawn FM by The Weeknd. It's just my kind of pop. And then the other is probably The Smiles. It's called Light for Attracting Attention.
Yeah.
And like The Smile is technically not Radiohead, but like
the singer sounds like him.
It's Tom York.
Yeah.
It's Tom York.
Yeah,
Johnny
he's
Greenwood.
singing.
Wow. Okay.
It's Johnny Greenwood. So like the 2 most famous members of the band are part of The Smile.
I did not know that.
It would be like
they sounded similar.
it would be like if David Gilmour and Roger Waters got together and like made a band that wasn't Pink Floyd. Like it's like
it's like that.
You know what you're getting though. So it's not a new Radiohead album, but it
doesn't sound like Radiohead though. Like, well, actually, let me not talk out.
It sounds like 2000 Radiohead to me.
Yeah, that's my impression too. Like they're going back to their band-based sound instead of like going off.
Yeah, it feels a bit more In Rainbows-ish. So not quite like the step from A Moon-Shaped Pool, but I'm in the minority of people that, while I like A Moon-Shaped Pool, it's not one of my favorites of theirs. So I actually kind of like what they did with this album, which at first I wasn't like super impressed with, but like a lot of Radiohead releases, after I gave it a couple listens, like each listen I come to appreciate more stuff, and I'd say probably tied with Dawn FM. Maybe I even like it a little more than Dawn FM for my album of the year, but it feels like I'd say 2000s Radiohead is kind of what you're getting with it, and I'm one of those stereotypical Radiohead fans, I think. Like, I love the band, can't get enough of them, so it's just right up my alley.
All right, well, the first thing I'll say is that A Moon-Shaped Pool is my 3rd favorite Radiohead album. Absolutely love that album, but I get it. I understand that everyone has a different order and stuff like that.
Everyone seems to really love that album, but for me, it just doesn't quite do it.
I don't know.
I actually did not like it. As the least Radiohead fan here, I didn't care for it at all.
Well, fair enough. My 2 albums, I also have 2 that are kind of tough to figure out which one's taking the top spot. And part of the reason I'm having a tough time deciding which one is really the best one is because one of them is a lot more recent than the other. And so I feel like I can't. You
haven't had enough time with it.
Yeah, I need to be able to look at it in retrospect to know which one I ultimately liked better. But the 2 albums are SZA's SOS, and is first one, and then the other one is Big Thief's Dragon New Mountain album. That's both really, really good. there are some songs on SZA's album that I think are better than any song on Big Thief's album. But the thing that Big Thief has is that album is like over an hour long. It's a ton of songs. It's like 17 songs. And
It's like an hour and a half long, right?
Yeah, it's super long, and like I'll listen to the whole thing. That's really rare for an album that length. It's just good the entire time, which is, really impressive. So yeah, I don't know. I'll have to listen to SZA's album more. But yeah, those are my two albums.
What's your favorite SZA song?
My favorite SZA song? Ghost in the Machine. And it's not just because Phoebe Bridgers. I love Phoebe Bridgers to death. But really, that song is just, I don't know. It hits different.
Yeah, both those albums were ones I was like meaning to get around to listening to eventually, but like I think they're even the SZA one's like an hour long, I think. Like they kind of
it's also long.
And
in my
sticking
opinion,
to stuff a little bit more.
The SZA one has, in my opinion, some weaker tracks, some tracks that are kind of just okay. But a lot of the best songs in that album are like, they're just super great. And I feel like that there's a cap to how good the best songs are on Big Thief's album, if that makes sense. Like the whole album's really, really good, but I don't think there's any songs that like immediately stick out like as just really timeless classics, better than the other songs on the album, which is a good album, great album even. But so it's kind of a weird thing where but SZA's album does have those songs. There's like 4 or 5 songs that I think are just like transcendent. I don't know, they're great, both of them. Often.
Did you guys listen to Steve Lacy's album?
No, just the song, the Bad Habit song. I like that song, but I haven't heard the album.
No, I'd say I have. Also, I just want to make a note. I know I think I'm different from you guys in this sense, definitely from Brayden, where I like to listen to an album multiple times, for me to, because I don't feel like I've really formed a solid opinion on the matter, because there's just been too many times growing up where an album had to grow on me. So I generally force myself to listen to an album at least twice at the very minimum, usually 3, and sometimes even more. But that also just makes it harder for me to listen to all the albums I want to, because it's kind of like work. Not that much. It's not that much labor, but so while I did feel like I listened to a decent amount by the end of the year, there were still a ton of big ones that I missed out on, haven't listened to yet. Although I feel like the Big Thief and SZA albums, I heard a lot of good things about those, so I probably will eventually get around to those two eventually, because I am interested in them.
Did you guys both hear the Kendrick Lamar album?
Yep.
And what about the Beyonce album? I would just guess those are probably the 2 biggest of the year, maybe?
Beyonce's album, so I follow this website that does an aggregate of critic lists, end of year lists and stuff like that. And Beyonce's album swept. It is easily considered the
I know
top
the
album.
website you're talking about. Yeah, I saw the aggregate too.
Yeah. I haven't listened to it. I've listened to 5 songs off that album, a bunch of songs off of it, but no, I haven't listened to the whole Beyonce album yet.
I liked it well enough, but not enough to go back.
Fair enough.
I listened to it, I was like, oh, that was good. And then I just never turned it back on. I hear it on the radio sometimes, though, some of the singles, and I don't switch it. I'm like, oh, this is a good one. And then the Kendrick album I listened to a few times, and there was definitely some highlights. I feel like I listened to it for a lot for a month, and then also stopped listening to Kendrick.
Yeah, as far as his albums go, I rank it 3rd. Yeah, 3rd. I liked it more than Damn.
Me too.
Yeah, I listened to it once in the car with you, I think, Brayden. I was trying to remember if it was you or my brother. But yeah, I mean, it was only one listen, so like I said, usually I like to listen to an album multiple times, but based on the one experience I had with it, I definitely enjoyed it. There was a lot of interesting stuff on there.
All right, should we talk about Kanye West, or just forget about that? Let other people. What has yet to been said about him that hasn't been said already?
When did Donda 2 come out? Which
did that come out this? I don't think that came.
I want to say that was before 2022.
Yeah, I think that was 2021.
Yeah.
So.
Which I didn't listen to. I don't know if any of you guys.
I heard it's really, really bad.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything good about it.
I haven't heard it.
So yeah,
I mean, like it wasn't on streaming. You had to buy
the weird device. So yeah, so like even before the past few months or whatever, like for a while, Kanye just kind of seemed to be living off of like his shenanigans, you know, more so than his music. Because I feel like his last like really acclaimed release was maybe Life of Pablo. Or wait, no, when did Kids See Ghosts come out?
Yeah,
2017.
Okay.
That was 2017. Okay.
I think.
And did like he release anything that get as much acclaim after that? Like,
no, because after that was the Jesus is King and Donda, and the best thing to describe those is mixed reactions to both of them.
Yeah.
I liked Jesus is King, and I loved Donda. Like I really, really liked Donda. The whole thing just kind of bummed me out about Kanye.
Yeah, because I know you've been a big fan of his over the years. You really liked his music, and
he's fan music. But yeah, it's just so unfortunate. Like how there's so many bad things artists do all the time, right?
Yeah.
But like, man, you really have to like outshine them all. And just right? Like, come on.
Yeah. I was gonna say you can like join us Morrissey fans now, but I think Kanye might actually be worse. So
it'll have to wait and see if he does a big like apology tour thing again. And will that have mattered? Is it too little, too late? Who knows? There is the mental illness thing, but it's like how far could you take that?
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. It's a doozy.
Yeah.
Another news. I really like Triangle Strategy. That was a good game.
Oh, video games.
But no, that was a game I probably played the most of. That came out in 2022, which I did put a lot of hours in that game.
I haven't even heard of this Triangle Strategy.
Have you heard of Octopath Traveler?
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, it was the next game they made after that.
Oh, okay.
It's not quite a sequel because they actually are making a real sequel.
Is it a spiritual sequel, that kind of thing?
Sort of, because it's a totally different type of game. That was RPG. This is strategy, or like a strategy RPG. But it's the same, like like art style and the same kind of storytelling.
Okay. Actually, looking it up on Google now, this might be one of those things I saw and it didn't stick in my mind at all. Not gonna lie, the name isn't the most memorable.
It does sound like a demo for when they're gonna come up with the real name.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about like a phone game or something when you said Triangle.
But what I will say is that Triangle Strategy has some of the best storytelling that I've played in a game in a long time. The gameplay itself it's Final Fantasy Tactics. If you like Final Fantasy Tactics, you'll like this. If you don't, it's the same game, or it's very, very similar. But I like that game well enough. It's not my favorite strategy game, but I don't hate it. So that was fine. But the storytelling, I really liked a lot. And so that was kind of the big driver for me. for this game?
Well, so I have to make a distinction between the game that I played a lot of this year and then the game that I played a lot of that actually came out this year. So as far as the game that I guess is like kind of sticking in my mind that I am associating with this year, is not even a complete game, but I've spent a really long time playing it, and I've just been really hyped. I'm really excited for when it comes out this year, but it's been in kind of like the early access stage for a long time. Baldur's Gate 3 is a great game. Highly recommend it.
I didn't even know they were working on a third one.
It is nothing like the old ones.
Okay.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 is by Larian Studios. So if you ever played like Divinity, Original Sin, or anything like that, then it's more like that style. But really, Baldur's Gate 3, the way that it's set up and like plays, they have almost basically simulated Dungeons and Dragons in a video game. Like, it's really close to the way that D&D is actually played. Complete with all the different choices you can do and things like that. And yeah, it's just really compelling, really fun. And yeah, and you can only like play like a quarter of the game, and it feels like that quarter feels like a totally fleshed out game. Like if you wanted to just play that quarter, it'd be worth it. But it's only a quarter. In come this summer, it's going to be 4 times as big of a game, which is crazy to me. Like, I don't know. I think it's awesome. But technically, that early access released in 2020, so I don't know if it counts for what we're talking about here, but might as well bring it up. So the game that I played that actually came out this year the most was Kirby, because that is the co-op game that Kiki and I played. It's good. It's like, if you've played Kirby games, it captures that, but like it's just at a high quality, in much the way that like Mario games like capture the Mario gameplay at a high quality, right? You know, these Nintendo games are pretty good. So yeah, and it's co-op, so if you got someone to play with, give it a shot.
Well, the 2 games from last year that I played were Elden Ring, the big one, and which I only played a little bit of. I actually didn't play much of that, but I am a big Dark Souls fan, so I did enjoy what I did play. I mean, they did a Breath of the Wild kind of and made it more open world, which I feel like I'm a little ambivalent towards that, but I will say, like, I didn't play much of the game, only like a few hours, so I don't think it's fair for me to give really like an opinion set in stone regarding that matter. But I just want to bring it up because it's like the biggest thing that happened video game wise, I felt like, last year. The other game from 2022, which I'm currently playing at the moment, based on the recommendation of my brother, is a game called Signalis. It's either Signalis or Signalis. I don't know how the stresses work. But what it is essentially is a throwback to classic survival horror games. Like, we're talking like PS1 era, like Silent Hill and Resident Evil. And I actually really like those kind of games. And I wouldn't even say I grew up with them. I just started playing them on emulators in my early 20s. But I actually really like that kind of gameplay. And this also, like, just graphic-wise, is a throwback to that era. Although it doesn't look quite as chunky and bad. It's more... I don't know how to describe it. You just have to see it. But it's... The easy way to describe it would be just Silent Hill set in space. Or like sci-fi Silent Hill. I guess it's set on like some other planet, but that's essentially it. It's a spooky enough game. It actually gave me a jump scare through a controller vibration, I think, which I don't know if that's ever happened before, which I enjoyed. But I mean, it's very much in classic survival horror vein, just like trying to figure out where this item goes here in which room, all the while like trying to like not being killed by monsters that you don't have enough ammo for. You can't kill all of them. So very, very old school stuff, which I like. Yeah, if you're into that kind of thing, definitely check it out.
I'm intrigued, actually.
And then just gonna really briefly blaze through TV.
Oh yeah, TV. That's a thing. I forgot about that. No.
I will say my favorite TV this year was not a show. It was the World Cup. I was obsessed, watching as many games as I could, and the final Messi won. I was jumping on the edge of my seat. I don't know why I care so much about this millionaire football player in Argentina, but I got really wrapped up in it. I was really, really hoping for him to win. He did, and I was super excited. So that was probably my top TV moment. But as far as like a TV shows, the new season of Cobra Kai show's still awesome.
That is a good show. I'm glad I started watching that.
I'll also give a shout out to White Lotus season 2. That was a really good season 1. I actually like season 1 better, but based on the people I talk to, I'm in the minority. Seems like most people actually prefer this season, and I can kind of see why. Like, this is a probably more dramatic season, but they were both great and totally worth watching if you haven't.
Well, I actually did watch a new series this year, and I kind of surprised myself because based on like my past I don't want to say experience, but based on how I've like interacted with this franchise in the past, I'm surprised I got into the show as much as I did. But that was Andor, new Star Wars show.
I did like Andor, and I liked the Lord of the Rings show and House of the Dragon too. It was all those kind of shows.
Yeah, I haven't watched any of the other Star Wars shows, I don't think, that have come out in Disney Plus. Like, not even The Mandalorian, which I've heard is good, and I may watch one of these days, but it's just, I don't really care all that much. But I was hearing good things about Andor. People were saying like, oh, this is like one of the best Star Wars shows. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a chance. And I actually got hooked on this thing. And it's the first time in a while where I was watching a show and actually had to wait each week for an episode to come out. And I think that definitely did affect the impact it had on me, because I actually remember what happened in Andor. Like I actually, like, it's stuck in my mind. And I'm actually looking forward to the next season. And I did enjoy, I think I actually kind of liked the 1 episode a week release, because it kind of gave me something to look forward to. And it was, and since I digested it that way, it's stuck in my mind. But yeah, this was, honestly, I think this might be the best Star Wars thing I've seen since the original trilogy. It's written very well. It's not just a bunch of like nostalgia bait, like callbacks to like things before. Like, I guess maybe there's kind of that in one character, but not really. Like, it's its own new story. Everything's new, and it's just, I don't know, the characters are compelling. The scenarios, like, the writing is very top notch. It's like way better than what I expected from like a Star Wars property, I guess, at this juncture in its life. So yeah, and I was very surprised, because usually I don't watch shows that much, and I don't, especially Star Wars shows, I just don't care about this kind of thing. But this was good enough that I'm looking forward to season 2. I will watch it when it comes out.
Let's see. So, I don't know. There's a couple shows that I feel like I could talk about. I guess I'll give a brief shout out to like this. I guess it's more like a limited series, which is Guillermo del Toro's like Box of Curiosities, which came out on Netflix. It's like a bunch of. It's basically a compilation of short horror episodes done by various directors that he's friends with, I guess. And it was really cool. It's got a Lovecraftian bent, so it's like for the most part like eldritch horror, and I don't know, I thought it was cool. Like it all feels very interesting, mysterious. There's one episode like with an alien that is my favorite. It's like just such a cool idea. So shout out to that one. But so and this is actually why I feel like I should have access to Amazon, because we definitely watched this on Amazon earlier in the year. But I haven't used Amazon at all since that time. So I'm wondering if we still have it. But it's a show called The Legend of Vox Machina. And if you've ever heard of this YouTube channel called Critical Role, like it's basically a bunch of voice actors playing D&D. Well, that channel became really, really popular. And to the point where they became their own company, and they made an animated TV show of their adventures, and that's The Legend of Vox Machina.
Oh, okay.
And it's really good. Like,
So it's like
really
an animated D&D session?
Yeah, it's basically like that. It's basically an animated D&D session.
I see the appeal.
Yeah, for sure. It's basically what you would want from that, except that there's like a real narrative. So when you think of like a D&D thing, you kind of think of like a bunch of people just kind of like messing around and stuff like that. But they're really good at like having character arcs and like things in their stories. And yeah, it's just great. The writing is funny. It's funny. It's interesting. Every time an episode came out, we would watch the episode that day that it came out, which is not something that usually we care that much about. So yeah, highly recommend it. And actually, the second season comes out today, apparently. So I'm gonna have to see if we have that Amazon account.
I might actually check that out.
Yeah, I highly recommend it for sure.
Well, we're a little over an hour, so call it there.
Okay.
If you're listening, I hope you got a lot of recommendations. Stuff to watch if you haven't checked them out already. If you're watching this in the distant future, then I hope you got some nostalgia from listening to all these things that came out in 2022. Stay with us. We're going to be here next year. We go all about 2023. So, hit subscribe, follow, do whatever you need to do to make sure you get this in your ears next year. But until then, bye-bye.
See ya.
Ta-ta.